N is for Noose by Sue Grafton. Copyright 1998 by Sue Grafton. This recording of the full-length reading of N is for Noose was published by arrangement with Random House Audio Publishing Incorporated and was produced in 1998 by Books on Tape Incorporated, which holds the copyright thereto. Neither this recording nor any part thereof may be reproduced or used for any purpose without prior written authority from Books on Tape Incorporated. This book is read by Mary Peiffer. For Stephen, who makes my life possible. Chapter 1. Sometimes I think about how odd it would be to catch a glimpse of the future, a quick view of events lying in store for us at some undisclosed date. Suppose we could peer through a tiny peephole in time and chance upon a flash of what was coming up in the years ahead. Some moments we saw would make no sense at all, and some, I suspect, would frighten us beyond endurance. If we knew what was looming, we'd avoid certain choices, select option B instead of A at the fork in the road. The job, the marriage, the move to a new state, childbirth, the first drink, the elective medical procedure, that long-anticipated ski trip that seemed like such fun until the dark rumble of the avalanche. If we understood the consequences of any given action, we could exercise discretion, thus restructuring our fate. Time, of course, only runs in one direction, and it seems to do so in an orderly progression. Here in the blank and stony present, we're shielded from the knowledge of the dangers that await us, protected from future horrors through blind innocence. Take the case in point. I was winding my way through the mountains in a cut-rate rental car, heading south on 395 toward the town of Noda Lake, California, where I was going to interview a potential client. The roadway was dry and the view was unobstructed, weather conditions clear. The client's business was unremarkable, at least as far as I could see. I had no idea there was any jeopardy waiting, or I'd have done something else. I'd left Dietz in Carson City, where I'd spent the last 2 weeks playing nurse companion while he recovered from surgery. He'd been scheduled for a knee replacement, and I'd volunteered to drive him back to Nevada in his snazzy little red Porsche. I make no claims to nurturing, but I'm a practical person, and the 9-hour journey seemed the obvious solution to the problem of how to get his car back to his home state. I'm a no-nonsense driver, and he knew he could count on me to get us to Carson City without any unnecessary side trips and no irrelevant conversation. He'd been staying in my apartment for the 2 previous months, and since our separation was approaching, we tended to avoid discussing anything personal. For the record, my last name is Millhone, first name Kinsey. I'm female, twice divorced, 7 weeks shy of 36, and reasonably fit. I'm a licensed private detective, currently residing in Santa Teresa, California, to which I'm attached like a tetherball on a very short cord. Occasionally, business will swing me out to other parts of the country, but I'm basically a small-town Seamus, and likely to remain so for life. Dietz's surgery, which was scheduled for the first Monday in March, proceeded uneventfully, so we can skip that part. Afterward, I returned to his condominium and toured the premises with interest. I'd been startled by the place when I first laid eyes on it, as it was more lavish and much better appointed than my poor digs back in Santa Teresa. Dietz was a nomad, and I'd never pictured his having much in the way of material possessions. While I was closeted in a converted single-car garage, recently remodeled to accommodate a sleeping loft and a second bathroom upstairs, Dietz maintained a 3-bedroom penthouse that probably encompassed 3,000 square feet of living space, including a roof patio and garden with an honest-to-God greenhouse. Granted, the 7-story building was located in a commercial district, but the views were astounding and the privacy profound. I'd been too polite to pry while he was standing right there beside me, but once he was safely ensconced in the orthopedic ward at Carson Tahoe Hospital, I felt comfortable scrutinizing everything in my immediate range, which necessitated dragging a chair around and standing on it in some cases. I checked closets and files and boxes and papers and drawers, pockets and suitcases, feeling equal parts relief and disappointment that he had nothing in particular to hide. I mean, what's the point of snooping if you can't uncover something good? I did have the chance to study a photograph of his ex-wife, Naomi, who was certainly a lot prettier than he'd ever indicated. Aside from that, his finances appeared to be in order, his medicine cabinet contained no sinister pharmaceutical revelations, and his private correspondence consisted almost entirely of assorted misspelled letters from his 2 college-aged sons. Lest you think I'm intrusive, I can assure you Dietz had searched my apartment just as thoroughly during the time he was in residence. I know this because I'd left a few booby traps, one of which he'd missed when he was picking open my locked desk drawers. His license might have lapsed, but most of his operating skills were still current. Neither of us had ever mentioned his invasion of my privacy, but I vowed I'd do likewise when the opportunity arose. Between working detectives, this is known as professional courtesy. You toss my place, and I'll toss yours. He was out of the hospital by Friday morning of that week. The ensuing recovery involved a lot of sitting around with his knee wrapped in bandages as thick as a bolster. We watched trash television, played gin rummy, and worked a jigsaw puzzle with a picture depicting a roiling nest of earthworms, so lifelike I nearly went off my feed. The first 3 days, I did all the cooking, which is to say, I made sandwiches, alternating between my famous peanut butter and pickle extravaganza and my much-beloved sliced, hot, hard-boiled egg confection with tons of Hellmann's mayonnaise and salt. After that, Dietz seemed eager to get back into the kitchen, and our menus expanded to include pizza, take-out Chinese, and Campbell's soup, tomato or asparagus, depending on our mood. By the end of 2 weeks, Dietz could pretty well fend for himself. His stitches were out, and he was hobbling around with a cane between bouts of physical therapy. He had a long way to go, but he could drive to his sessions and otherwise seemed able to tend to his own needs. By then, I thought it entirely possible I'd go mad from trailing after him. It was time to hit the road before our togetherness began to chafe. I enjoyed being with him, but I knew my limitations. I kept my farewells perfunctory. Lots of airy, "Okay, fine, thanks a lot, I'll see you laters." It was my way of minimizing the painful lump in my throat, staving off the embarrassing boo-hoos I thought were best left unexpressed. Don't ask me to reconcile the misery I felt with the nearly giddy sense of relief. Nobody ever said emotions made any sense. So, there I was, barreling down the highway in search of employment, and not at all fussy about what kind of work I'd take. I wanted distraction. I wanted money, escape, anything to keep my mind off the subject of Robert Dietz. I'm not good at goodbyes. I've suffered way too many in my day, and I don't like the sensation. On the other hand, I'm not that good at relationships. Get close to someone, and next thing you know, you've given them the power to wound, betray, irritate, abandon you, or bore you senseless. My general policy is to keep my distance, thus avoiding a lot of unruly emotion. In psychiatric circles, there are names for people like me. I flipped on the car radio, picking up a scratchy station from Los Angeles, 300 miles to the south. Gradually, I began to tune into the surrounding landscape. Highway 395 cut south out of Carson City, through Minden and Gardnerville. Just north of Topaz, I had crossed the state line into eastern California. The backbone of the state is the towering Sierra Nevada range, the up-tilted edge of a huge fault block, gouged out later by a series of glaciers. To my left was Mono Lake, shrinking at the rate of 2 feet a year, increasingly saline, supporting little in the way of marine life beyond brine shrimp and the attendant feasting of the birds. Somewhere to my right, through a dark green forest of Jeffrey pines, was Yosemite National Park, with its towering peaks and rugged canyons, lakes and thundering waterfalls. Meadows, powdered now in light snow, were once the bottom of a Pleistocene lake. Later in the spring, these same meadows would be dense with wildflowers. In the higher ranges, the winter snowpack hadn't yet melted, but the passes were open. It was the kind of scenery described as breathtaking by those who are easily winded. I'm not a big fan of the outdoors, but even I was sufficiently impressed to murmur, "Wow," speeding past a scenic vista point at 70 miles an hour. The prospective client I was traveling to meet was a woman named Selma Newquist, whose husband, I was told, had died sometime within the past few weeks. Dietz had done work for this woman in the past, helping her extricate herself from an unsavory first marriage. I didn't get all the details, but he alluded to the fact that the financial goods he'd gotten on the husband had given Selma enough leverage to free herself from the relationship. There'd been a subsequent marriage, and it was this second husband whose death had apparently...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?